In the Gospel of today, several strands are interwoven, but one could almost pass us by unnoticed. It is as though something of the Lord's sense of humour breaks through in the midst of high tragedy. If one looks at the scene, one can see him going all the way to look for fruit from the fig tree and saying, when he finds nothing but leaves on it, "May no one ever eat fruit from you again." Of course, he's going to draw from this a teaching on the power of prayer. And it goes even further insofar as he wants us not only to believe in what we're praying for, but also to have a purity of heart as we do so, not to have any unforgiveness in our heart as we pray, for that would contaminate it. But the house of prayer also is now no joking way here. He puts himself at risk and, of course, indirectly provokes his own passion. For in these acts, which are seen as rebellion, he provokes the ire of the authorities. But he stands up for the authority of his Father, and he gives a clear teaching which applies also to us, even more perhaps than to the context in which it is used. For we have par excellence the house of prayer, for we have the real presence, of which the other was only a foreshadowing. Types and shadows have their ending, for the newer right is here. And when we ask ourselves, have we brought in clutter into the house of God? Have we brought in noise, which is a spiritual clutter, which crowds out the deep silence needed for the Lord to be heard? It's all something to be looked at, especially on a First Friday, the first Friday of the month of the Sacred Heart. It would seem that in the agony in the garden, this crying out, not able to bear this pain, was a spiritual one, that the pain in question was that of the abuse of grace, the waste of the precious blood. He could see how awful it was going to be in the future, all these souls not using or even abusing what was being gained at such a price. And it would seem that the abuse of the sacramental life of the Church was part of this. We know from mystics that he was consoled on that night by the vision of all the consolation given him in holy hours and reparation over the centuries to come. We do well to remember that as we do our holy hour. But it is something to be aware of, that we are more hurt by those who are dear to us than by those who are already wanting to be our enemies. The Lord is hurt by his own, and nowadays that hurt happens in his own house. So much noise. C.S. Lewis, as a good Anglican, wrote something about the hymns. He mentioned that they were third-class poetry set to sixth-class music. What would he have to say about some of our material? Why should God be shortchanged, and his people also? Pope Benedict does comment in some of the recent material that has come out after his death, for he allowed things to be published after his death, not before, that with regard to the effect of faith on culture, it is a tragedy that by now the whole plethora of high, beautiful wealth of Christian heritage has been relegated to the domain of the concert, and no longer can we enthrone God with what was made for him in his own house. Participation has to be participation in all, but does it? Is there no participation of the heart, which can be encouraged to go into flight mode by beautiful music, which collocates that heart in a different domain? Whereas, with tongue-in-cheek, Pope Benedict does mention that in the interests of participation of all, the participation of his heart is made impossible by the noisy dissonance of the singer who can't sing a note next to him, but is obliged to participate. We need to be aware of what is going on. Our brethren in the East have plenty of time to go into calm, unhurried harmony, 3 hours of time, and we get agitated after 20 minutes. My house shall be called a house of prayer. C.S. Lewis talks about the liturgical fidget. Our houses of prayer are very fidgety, and man has become very much centre stage. O Sacred Heart, our home lies deep in thee. All of thou art an exalted rest, in him the glory of the blessed. O Sacred Heart, O Sacred Heart, thou fount of comfort tears, where those living waters flow, new love to sinners they bestow. O Sacred Heart, O Sacred Heart, our trust is all in thee, for thou must not be dark and clear, thou breathest rest where thou art near. O Sacred Heart, O Sacred Heart, when shades of death shall fall, receive us 'neath thy gentle care, and save us from the tempter's snare. O Sacred Heart, O Sacred Heart, leading our children home, where we may ever rest near thee, in